if you liked that introduction music, please go give at breathe underscore light underscore society on Instagram and at Sound Healer Cody on TikTok a follow and listen. Okay, he does absolutely fantastic work. I am so thankful that he has let me use his music in my introduction. You might have noticed that it is different from season one. That is because all of the old files that I had from the previous episode are gone with the software changing. But he did update his panels, like his usernames. I think his old account got hacked or something along those lines. So please go support him. He does absolutely fantastic work. We are so thankful for Cody. And thank you so much again for listening. And also, if you want to follow the page, it is on TikTok and Instagram. It is under LGFG Podcast. Thanks. Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Let It Go, Flow, and Grow podcast. I am your host, Rubes. You might be noticing a few different things if you listen to the first season. A lot has changed. One, I ended up getting a new mic. So that's super cool. I have a computer now. Super, super awesome. Super thankful and grateful to my partner because he built me a literal computer and I was able to get this microphone because I got it as a birthday present. So I'm super happy about it. However, my best friend told me that a lot of people enjoy going to YouTube to basically watch podcasts, listen to podcasts, all the things. So I'm trying to stay hip as I'm in my late 20s, trying to stay hip and give the people what they want, I guess. I don't know. It doesn't really matter to me at the end of the day. I just want to get my message out there. I have a lot of ramblings that go on in my mind, so I'm happy to be here. Hopefully the audio quality is better. Feel free to not watch the video if you do not feel like you have to. Um, but yeah, here I am, uh, back from the dead, resurrected. No, I'm just kidding. This is really uncomfortable, and I usually do not record myself visually whenever I am recording podcasts because I get very distracted. So I'm not even going to watch the video. I'm just going to let it be, and we're going to do it. Um, Now, on top of that, Spotify has changed their recording like program immensely. So it's probably going to sound a lot different than season one. Um, And honestly, what I might do is just go and re record all of the episodes from season one because I am a perfectionist and I prefer consistency whenever it comes to my work. However, change is growth, things take time to progress. So bear with me as I try to learn all the ins and outs of a lot of different things. I'm gonna be here doing my thing. Wish me luck on it. Welcome to the journey. If you are starting here, I would highly recommend that you go back to season one, start with episode one, start there, because the way that I do my episodes is I kind of build on top of them. So I really want you to start from season one if you can. Just because the way that I'm doing these episodes is I'm just like building on the things that I have been teaching for my own spiritual journey. If you are new here, this podcast is all about becoming your most authentic self from the things that I have learned about healing and growing in my journey. I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I just want to help those where I can. And also, I have so many ramblings that go on in my mind. Somebody was like, hey, you should really start a podcast. And so I took that advice, and here I am. And I've got God right beside me. God's going to help me through this. Um, no, I'm not going to push my religion down your throat. That's just my belief. I work with God. I work with the divine, source, creator, God, whatever you want to call them. Really, really, really wanted me to make this. And I wanted to as well. So here I am. Welcome. Here's season two. Okay, so now that we have all of that other stuff out of the way about catching up, yada, 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 this episode is going to be all about the law of attraction. It's going to be about the laws of the universe. But law of attraction in particular, because I feel like there's a lot of hubbub around the law of attraction right now with manifestation and such. Um, so If you've heard about manifestation on social media, you are not alone. I'm going to be diving a little bit deeper into that. But first things first, I do have a fun fact for you, as I always do. Have you heard about the Project MK Ultra? If you haven't, I have news for you. From the 50s to, I would say, about the 70s, during the Cold War era, the CIA and America was they were concerned that their soldiers who were taken in as hostages during the Cold War were basically getting brainwashed um, by like the Soviets, by the Chinese, by the North Koreans. And so, in response, they started doing psychedelic drug, paralytics, and electric shock therapy experiments on the hostages that they had to see whether or not they could brainwash and do psychological torture on counterintelligence. And I did not mean to say hostages. I meant to say people who weren't even suspecting that they were going to be experimented on, which were just normal Americans. I'm not sure if they were also doing this on their own hostages. It would not surprise me. However, they basically were trying to figure out whether or not, yeah, they could get information out of like hostages and stuff by doing these experiments. Um, and by their end of their test, they realized that basically there was just too much inconsistency for them to be able to use psychedelics, electric shock therapy, and paralytics for them to be able to like use it as a form of getting information from the ops, pretty much. Um, so a big problem with MK Ultra, like I said earlier, is that it was done on unsuspecting people, unsuspecting Americans. And these tests were done non consensually to a lot of men. There were some volunteers, but there was actually another operation that was put into the operation or project MK Ultra, and this was called Operation Midnight Climax. Um, so basically they would send out S workers to lure these men back to these houses so that way they could do these unsuspecting experimentations, and they would lace these men's drinks with LSD to kind of see how they would respond. And they would be taken into these houses where there were two-way mirrors where they could watch like their reaction to getting laced with LSD. Later on, there ended up being a lot more layers to the entire situation. For example, there was a unaliving that ended up happening, that ended up getting covered up, and they ended up finding out about the fact that it had gotten covered up by a person unaliving themselves. That was like their cover up story. But later on in the 90s, they did another autopsy and realized that there was a lot more foul play than just someone unaliving themselves. There's also some other key players that were part of this. So there was a novelist named Ken Kesey, Kesey. If you've ever read the book or seen the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, that is the author. But previously, before he wrote that book, he went to Stanford University and actually volunteered for Project MK Ultra. And he ended up throwing a bunch of parties later on that ended up bringing in psychedelics. And that's kind of where like the jam session, Grateful Dead scene, hippie movement, psychedelic movement all really started. So it's kind of funny that there's like a whole war on drugs against the hippie movement, even though the CIA was basically the whole reason why it started in the first place. Yeah. So, um, later on, whenever it ended up getting stopped in the 70s, a lot of their evidence and findings ended up just getting destroyed, just magically, just got destroyed. And so now we still do have some of the documentation that was leaked. You can look it up. Like it's from the CIA. They have their official documentation of their findings. from these experiments. And they weren't just using LSD. I mean, they were using like MDMA, they were using mushrooms, mescaline, meth, heroin. I mean, it wasn't just LSD. Um, and later on, in 74, there was a New York Times author who named Seymour Hersh. And he ended up putting out an article that was basically unraveling a lot of what the CIA was doing and bringing to light to the American people, like, hey, just letting you know, like, the CIA has been doing this to unsuspecting people. Um, and here's some layers to the situation, which basically tied into like certain political figures getting assassinated. And like, there's just a lot. And I can do a whole like episode on Project MK Ultra if you want me to. I'm gonna try to turn on the comments for this episode on Spotify. But you can also go to our TikTok or go to my TikTok, go to Instagram for the page. It's the LGFG podcast. And then also the email is the LGFG podcast at Gmail. Um, so, yeah, that is my fun fact of the week. Again, if you don't believe me, feel free to look up the documentation online. And I really do not mind doing an episode on this as a detour episode, just because I do find it extremely fascinating, like, rabbit holes such as that. So, fun fact of the week. Hope you enjoyed it. Okay, so now that we have all that fun stuff out of the way, let's move on to the actual episode. So, with the laws of the universe, it is said that, we have all these laws that are unspoken, but that all souls must follow them and abide by them. And this might be similar to what you were taught growing up. Like, if you grew up in the Christian culture, you probably have heard about the 10 Commandments, such as like don't unalive others, don't steal, etc. Or you might have heard of the Hermetic laws. A lot of people have these laws under different titles. However, I have learned them under the laws of the universe. And in a bit, I'm going to be going over the law of attraction, which is going to be manifestation. That's going to be the main thing I'm going to be focusing on, but I am going to go over all of them. So, starting off, we have the law of oneness, which is the fact that we are all connected. I have gone over this in a different episode. This is all about the collective consciousness. It's all about being part of that spiritual iCloud. We are all connected. We are all one soul. And the way that I think about it is basically that creator, source, God, whatever you would like to call them, is kind of like our dad in a way. And a lot of people will agree with that. But basically, every single person, soul, all throughout the entire like universe, I'm not even just talking about on earth, I mean everywhere, we are all connected because we are all one soul, and we are all able to tap into that spiritual iCloud of information and get downloads, as some people might say, that we can tap into so that way we can learn and we can grow. And I just want to go back just for a little bit. There were a couple things that I wanted to say. One thing that I wanted to say is, remember that, well, I hope that you would know this. I do not think that I am better than you. I hope that you understand that. I just want to give you the tools so that you can learn this information from the mistakes that I have made. And I'm not going to do your homework for you. All I am going to do is give you the tools so that way you can have the resources whenever you are trying to navigate through your own healing journey. There's nothing different between yourself and me. All the things that I have learned have been through research, and they have been through meditation and downloads and things that I have done on my deep dive and my journey. The things that I can do and the things that I have learned have been through my own spiritual journey. But at the end of the day, we are all one. There's no one who is better than anyone else. There's no one who is bigger than anybody else. All I want to do is help. Anyways, the other thing is that this is something that I heard earlier that I think, as a download, that I think would be important that you know. You don't need to be anything else that somebody else wants you to be. And I'm going to say that again. You don't need to be what someone else wants you to be. What you need to do is be your most authentic self. Do the things that you're passionate about. I saw a video that said that are we just all acting? Because that's how it feels. And in reality, I see that a lot. Is that a lot of us are just acting and pretending to be these things that we are not, because that is what we have been sculpted into believing that we should do. And that's where social norms come in and all these things. But the only thing that is standing in between you and peace and your highest potential are your own limiting beliefs. And that is why I'm going over these different laws and going over the law of manifestation, because I'm not saying that we can necessarily like change the world or whatever. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to change the world by, I don't know how to word this. um I'm not putting it on your shoulders to change the world around you. I am only trying to help you tap in and change your own reality, because life is all about perspective. Thank you, Source. I think that's the best way to put that. But the only thing that is keeping you from your highest potential is just yourself. Okay. So, oh, and sorry, one more thing. Everything that you listen to, everything that you're reading, all these things are going to play a part in how your perspective is and how things reflect in your reality. So if you're always listening to, say, like really angry or sad music, that's probably going to affect your mood. And that just ties into psychology, but it also ties into reprogramming your mind. So if you want to reprogram your mind and you're always listening to really depressing music, maybe change that. Um, like something that I listened to a lot whenever I was growing up was true crime. I still love true crime. I still love learning about it. But if you like true crime, like myself, you might notice that you start being more hyper aware and you start kind of getting more of a bleak outlook on life, if that makes sense. And so, personally, what I had to do was I had to take a step back from true crime for a while in my reality, in my life personally, because I realized how much of an effect it was having on my mindset, because these things are very heavy, right? So, since I was listening to true crime constantly, it really started to weigh on me. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. But these things aren't just about like the podcast or the documentaries or the movies or anything that you're listening to. It's about everything that you are focusing your energy on. And I'm about to get deeper into that. So let me go to the next part. All right. So, law number 2, law of energy and vibration. We are all energy, we all vibrate at different levels. If you've ever heard of an aura, that is what that is. That is your energy, like vibration. You might hear somebody say, like, oh, you have good vibes, or oh, that person has really bad vibes. We are all energy, we are all vibration. Um, and a lot of people might see like auras. Some people have that gift. Um, Different people have like different energy signatures. That's something that might come at like a later point in your spiritual journey. Um, but I personally think with like auras and things along those lines, that's something that's super interesting to me. There are actually cameras that can pick up what your aura is, and it can be analyzed like based on how bright it is, how dull it is, what color it is, etc., etc. And a lot of times it is like tied into your personality. So, for example, um, whenever I went to a metaphysical convention, I ended up getting my aura like taken a picture of, and I got this aura picture like 7 years ago, that was red. And that was correct. It was also very dull, but it was red. And it was because I was in my root chakra. I think that it's really tied into what chakra you are working on balancing at that time. Um, but at the time, it was red because I was in the root. I was in a very much like scarcity mindset. Root is all about like your stability in life. It's what ties you to the 3D. It's like what grounds you, all those kinds of things. Um, and then I ended up taking it last year whenever I ended up going. So there's a 7-year difference. I've done a lot more healing. And now, I'm not going to say what color it is, but it's a completely different color. Actually, I think I already put it on the Instagram of this page, but it is a completely different color. It is so much brighter. And it was interesting because I was sitting with other people um whenever I was getting like because what I paid for was like get the color, like look at the color, and then also you can get like a consultation afterwards to basically kind of analyze like what it means. So I was sitting next to this other woman who had a different color than I did, and hers was like very gray and like very dim, not in like a bad way. It was just like very different from mine. And she actually, I showed her mine, and she was like, "Whoa, like look at how bright yours is!" Like, oh my gosh, like it was just such a difference. And then I think I looked at another person, and theirs was like kind of in between me and this other woman's, and it was all different colors. And something else that I found cool was that I saw a video of a woman who was pregnant and she did not realize that she was pregnant. So she got her aura taken, and inside her belly, she had another aura inside of her belly. And then she found out, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant, and went and took a test. And yes, she was pregnant. So I find that really, really cool. And I just think it's super fun to do. But yes, so coming back from my rant, we are all energy. We all have different vibrations. If you are constantly depressed and like basically putting out the beliefs of like, I'm not good enough, everyone hates me, blah, 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 blah. And I'm not saying that you are lesser because you are depressed or any sense. I understand that that is something difficult to struggle with because I have gone through my bouts of depression as well. I have gone through the phases of horrific depression and have gone through a whole journey of that in terms of my own mental health. And there are still some days where I do feel depressed. However, I also can say this because I have been in the depression spiral, and sometimes it is almost addictive to fall into the spiral. And I know that might be a controversial saying, but what I mean is sometimes it is easier to think of like, oh, I'm not worth anything, and then follow that with, well, everyone hates me anyways, and then looking for reasons to be depressed, if that makes sense. Or if you wake up and you automatically think, oh, today's going to be such a horrible day, and then and then just kind of adding on to it. And I'm not saying that your depression is not valid. That is not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that sometimes it is addictive, and sometimes those who are kind of like more like, oh, the world's against me and this is victim mentality. I'm not saying that those who are depressed are like that. I'm just saying that you probably have met people who are similar to energy vampires. Because yes, depression really sucks. And yes, it does feel like the world is against you and all these things. But if you are not taking the means to try to change that in any form or fashion, you are going to have to take energy from other people and kind of be like a vortex because you are not filling your own energetic cup. And because you are not filling your own energetic cup, you're going to be stealing it from other people. And I'm sure that you have met people in this life. And honestly, this is something that I have been learning more and more is that like the whole thing about like vampirism and all that kind of stuff is that like some say that there are people who like are basically born that way, or like they're not necessarily they don't exactly have a soul. Um, they're just kind of like an empty vessel, or like lower vibrational entity, or like lower vibrational energy. I'm going to try to bring it back. But, anyways, you probably have worked with somebody who is like, oh, the world's against me, and oh, there's nothing good that can ever happen for me. And even if you go and tell them, like, oh, no, you're doing really well at this or anything, then they'll just like be rude to you or aggressive towards you, or they'll just kind of like spat at what you're saying, whatever it is. I'm not saying this is you. I'm just saying I'm sure that you have dealt with this. And hopefully I'm just going to pretend like you're nodding. I can't see you, but I'm sure that you understand what I'm saying. And now I'm going to wrap this up with the law of energy and vibration. Okay, we are moving on to the next one. Okay, law number 3, law of action. So, if we want to have something manifest into our life or bring something into our reality, we have to take action towards those manifestations so that we can send energy towards what we want. So, for example, if you wanted to be a fashion designer, you need to at least figure out how to sew, or at least take steps towards it. Like maybe if you want to be a fashion designer, maybe look up different techniques on how to sew, or look up different techniques that you can try in the future. Or maybe if you wanted to be a fashion designer, you should go out and get a thread and needle, or whatever it may be, small steps even. But the point is, this ties into like being at the right place at the right time. If you want something to be brought into your reality and you want to go after something, you need to take steps towards it. And that ties into what I was saying earlier of, do not be what other people want you to be. You will never be happy if you are trying to make everybody around you happy and not yourself. And I'm not saying be selfish. I am saying stop trying to be what somebody else wants you to be, and stop trying to be put into a box that somebody else has created for you, because I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to get stuffy and you're going to be unhappy. Coming back. So, with the law of action, do things that make you happy, that are going towards the goals that you want to go to. If you want to buy a car, you're probably going to be looking at pictures of cars that you want. If you want a car, you're going to be, pointing out, oh, I want this kind of thing. I want this kind of thing. I want this kind of thing. And you're going to start saving money probably if you want a car. You know what I mean? Like, you're probably going to take the bus more if you have that opportunity versus taking a Lyft. Whatever it may be, you have to take actions towards what you want. Okay. Number 4, law of correspondence. As above, so below. So whatever you think about and focus your energy on will reflect into your reality. So this ties into your emotions. And basically, it means that our internal environments will reflect into the external. So if you're living in a scarcity mindset, like from ego, then this will reflect into reality. And I've seen this personally and with myself. So like, say that you are a waitress or a waiter or server. Sorry, I try to stay away from using the term waitress or waiter, and just use server. But some people don't know what that means. So say that you're serving tables and you go into your shift, and I've absolutely done this. I've absolutely done this. I used to do this all the time. And you're like, yeah, I know that I'm not going to make money today. God, like nobody tips. And you go over to this table, and you're like thinking in your mind, you're like, oh yeah, they're not going to tip. Like, they're not going to tip very well at all. And then they don't. And you go throughout, you're like, see, that's exactly what I mean. See, yeah. And it's because your internal reality is reflecting in your external reality. So if you're thinking, oh yeah, I'm not gonna make any money, and I'm not even like good at my job, and like da 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 and all this stuff, that's gonna reflect because you're putting that vibration out, you're putting that like wavelength radio signal out of, yeah, you know what, I don't deserve this anyways. I don't even like saying that out loud. But anyways, so if something in your world isn't happening how you want it, then you need to go within and figure out why that is happening. So, and sometimes it can just be that you're neglecting a wound that it's time to deal with. So, for example, and I'm going to put a trigger warning here. This is about SA. Okay, so trigger warning, scroll away or whatever, maybe skip ahead. I don't know. Okay, so personally, I have gone through the journey of SA, right? I have been um, assaulted many, many times, many, many times. And I'm being very vulnerable with you right now. But because of that, there have been a lot of wounds. And because of that, I have had to start unraveling that wound because I realized that it was causing a huge blockage in my life. I have a lot of fear around that wound. It's a very deep wound. And it has happened to me so many times that it's just like, okay, I finally understand what has happened. I now need to address all the emotions and feelings and heal from what I have now realized, right? So it's wonderful to be like, oh, yeah, that happened. Cool. I'm moving on with my life now. That's great and everything. But if you don't go back and like process the emotions that have happened from that, um, you're not going to be able to break that cycle and heal and move on. So something that happened with me was I was a Lyft driver and a Uber driver, and something that I've been working on for about a year and a half now is all of the trauma that I have with SA. And I kind of neglected it for a while. This was about, I'd say, like 3 months ago. I was really neglecting that wound because I was like, oh God, I don't want to touch this wound. I hate it. I don't, like, I'm not strong enough to deal with this wound. I'm not strong enough to break this cycle and whatever it is and all this stuff. And so, because I wasn't dealing with the wound, it started to manifest into my reality. And again, trigger warning, skip ahead again if you're not ready to hear this, but trigger warning, I ended up getting, as a Lyft driver, assaulted 3 times in 1 week. Nobody put their hands on me, thank God, literally. However, the same thing kept popping up in my reality. What would happen is I would end up getting passengers, male passengers, that would get in my car, and they would see me, and they'd be like, "Oh, a female driver," and they would do stuff in the back seat with themselves. Or I would have two passengers, do it to each other in my back seat. Happened 3 different times. And finally, I ended up standing up to the person and I ended up rolling the windows down for the last one that it happened with. And he was like, "Oh, you're rolling the windows down. Oh my God. Or do you need some air?" Whatever. I was like, "Yes," because I was next to a shuttle bus at the airport while he was doing this in my back seat. And I was so done with it. I was so annoyed. Like, it wasn't even like I was like, yes, I was disgusted, but it was more just like okay, like, I get the message, universe. All right, fine. I will go and I will deal with this now because it is time for me to stop neglecting this wound, because obviously things that I am dealing with internally in my subconscious that because I was having it in my dreams and I was having it in my reality. And I had this fear as a female passenger that I was going to get assaulted, and then it ended up happening 3 times in 1 week. And so I ended up basically having to go home and give myself space to do the shadow work and do the journaling to be able to finally process one of the largest wounds that I have ever dealt with in this lifetime. And once that happened, it immediately stopped. Actually, what ended up happening was Lyft started promoting Lyft Women Connect. And for the entire next 2 weeks, I only had female passengers, because I finally realized, after doing that work, all the belief systems that I had around myself and being a woman and all these things and men and all this stuff. And anyways, the point is, if something in your reality is not what you want it to be, it is time for you to figure out what your trigger is, figure out what your wound is, and go in and deal with that. Check in with yourself, check in with your spirit team, check in with your higher self, God, creator, source, whomever. Check in. You don't need tarot cards. Tarot cards might be helpful. Divination tools might be helpful. But what's really going to help is you checking in with yourself. And for you to be able to check in with yourself, you need to build a relationship with yourself. And that starts with healing. And that starts with dealing with the baggage that you are carrying around. And I have gone through that in my previous season. So I'd highly recommend that you went and listen to it so that you can start learning how to deal with your stuff and start healing from it and actually using it as ammo. Okay. Anyways, and my next episode is honestly all about that. So, anyways, the point is, law of correspondence. If something in your reality is not what you want it to be, figure out what is going on internally that is causing that to manifest into your reality. Capiche? Anyways, okay, so we're going to move on now. I apologize for that heaviness. But sorry, not sorry. Anyways, number 5, law of cause and effect. Everything happens for a reason, and this is karma. So if you do something, something will happen in response. And a lot of people think of this as like a right time, right place. A lot of people think of this as you reap what you sow. And this is also the butterfly effect or ripple or domino effect. So if you have not seen the movie The Butterfly Effect with Ashton Kutcher, I saw it a long time ago. And from what I remember, I do remember this one important scene. The scene was basically about Ashton Kutcher. Whenever he was younger, his I think it was his best friend or his girlfriend or someone that one of the main female characters in the movie. She had like something bad had happened to her. I don't remember what it was. I think I remember, but I'm not even going to say it. Something bad happened to her. And he basically went back in time and stopped it from happening. And then he like went back into the future and he realized that she never, I think she wanted to become a lawyer and she never became a lawyer because he had gone back and like changed the future by stopping that event. So just remember everything happens for a reason, right? So my belief, personal belief, is that the things that I have faced in this life, all of it happened for a reason. That's why I made this podcast, because for a long time, whenever I was talking to God about it, I was like, God, I don't understand why these things keep happening to me. Like, why has all this stuff happened to me? And now that I am at where I am at in my healing journey, he came to me and he was like, it is time for you to share your story. It is time for you to talk about everything that has happened to you and all the work that you have done. And that is why I made this podcast, because everything happens for a reason. Because how am I supposed to have empathy and teach you things if I had never gone through them? I'd be talking out my ass. I wouldn't know what any of this felt like. And whenever I say that I have gone through a lot, I really mean that I have gone through a lot. Oh, man. Anyways, I'm not saying that. I don't even know how to put that. My head's spinning at this point. Let's move on to the next one. Basically, the point is everything happens for a reason. Okay, so if something happened to you, it's probably because something in the past happened. It could also, and then I think this also ties into like past lives and reincarnation and all that kind of stuff, because things that happened to you as a child might have been from a previous life, or it could just be that you're clearing out karmic debt, or it could be that you needed it to propel you forward in this reality. I don't know. All of it is all of it, right? um okay, I'm gonna move forward because I keep rambling, but you know what, it's my show, I can do whatever I want. Okay, number 6. There are 12 of these, by the way, I'm so sorry. Okay, so number 6, law of compensation. What you will do will have consequences, and what you put out will come back to you. So basically you get what you get. I think about this a lot with tipping, because like whenever I tip someone, I already know that if I like say that I'm like feeling really generous, um, like I will give somebody a really nice tip, and I already know that that money is probably going to come back to me later on. And I see that happen all the time. Um, so I think that's like always a good way to think about it. But also at the same time, it's also like lead with what you feel is right. Lead with what your soul feels is right. Lead with your heart. Lead with love and good intentions. And I think that was one of Jesus's like biggest messages, was just like love your neighbor as yourself. Like if you want good things to happen to you, do good things to other people. And that ties in as well with the Egyptian mythology thing, right? With Anubis, where he's holding like the scales with the feather, and see, and putting your heart in one of the scales, because it's all about like doing good things and putting good things out there and treating other people nicely with kindness. Um, because you never know how that's going to affect someone. Say, like, I don't know if you've ever had such a horrible day that you're just like, oh man, unless somebody smiles at me, I think this is it. I think this is going to be my 13th reason. I think this is like, you know, like this is it. And somebody smiles at you and you realize that life isn't that bad. You never know the impact of your actions on other people. So always lead with good intentions and understand that you will get back what you put out. So, like, if you go through a drive through and you pay forward to someone, you're probably going to get that back in some way. Okay, I'm sure you get it now. However, at the same time, this is like if you do something wrong to someone, that's kind of like think of like it as like a karmic debt. Like if you stole from someone, someone's probably going to steal from you later on. But this is different than the rule of three, which is a pagan belief. I actually ended up finding out that is a paganistic belief. So that's different than like the law of compensation, but a lot of people will go under the pagan rule. 1 second. Let me turn off my alarm. I apologize. Let's move into law of attraction, which is going to be number 7. And this is what the main focus of this episode is going to be about. So, whatever you speak into your life and think about constantly will be attracted to you, and that ties into manifestation. So, be intentional. And I'm just going to kind of glide past that one because, again, I'm going to be coming right back to it. Um, with law number 8 is going to be law of perpetual transmutation of energy. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. This is quantum physics, which means that you can take energy that is sent to you and mold/filter it into something else. If you do not release or transmute energy, then it will stick and stay stuck, causing things like stagnancy. And my personal belief is that it can cause some serious health problems, which I've also learned from a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And I actually just experienced this a couple days ago. I was having a really odd day. It was like started off bad, then got good, then got bad, then got good, then got bad, then got good, and it was just kind of like ping ponging back and forth because there was a lot of like internal wounds because I'm still healing from stuff. That's mostly a big reason why I took the hiatus for the 6 months was because I was healing from my stuff, um, and just a lot of other reasons. But something that happened was that something came up internally, and I was at lunch, and I literally felt it like in my chest, like rise up out of like from my back, in my chest, rise up and go into my throat. And it was like that knot in your throat whenever you're trying not to cry. And I was at lunch at work, so I knew like I needed to scream and I needed to like cry and like release this energy and baggage that was so heavy, but I couldn't do that because I was in a lunchroom at work. So instead, I ended up swallowing it and like just letting like my tears that were coming down, I just like wipe them away. And I physically felt that energy go back down and spread into my back and cause the biggest knot in my back. And I still have to deal with it because I have been putting off my shadow work. Yes, I do it too. But I have a knot in my back. And I felt it like spread, like it was painful. It was like it like spread throughout my upper back and then balled up into a knot. And I have this knot in my back. And I felt that like happen, and I'm like, yep, I now know I need to release and transmute this energy in some way. So I released some of it and transmuted it in some ways by doing some poetry. I wrote some poetry, um, but I now have to take time to go back in and process what I was dealing with in that motion in that time. Usually what I'll do is I'll write down how I'm feeling at that time so that way I can know, okay, exactly, okay, yes, this was my trigger at that time, this is how I was feeling. Let me tap back into this energy now where I'm in a safe place where I can now process and feel all of the emotions and heal it and transmute it and release it and give it to Mother Earth, or just transmute it into something beautiful like music, or whatever else, or art. Like you can take that energy and be intentional with it. Bugs. Okay, I'm sorry. My cat is on top of my computer. Bugs. Girl. 1 second. Let me pause this. Girl. Okay. Girl. Thank you. Anyway, sorry. My boyfriend's cat likes to climb on top of my computer, and I'm so scared that it's going to fall over. Um, But anyways, I'm going to take a much deeper dive into transmutation in a later episode. Something that I noticed this past year, because I only started doing this about a year ago. Um, but something that I learned is that a lot of others in the collective who are at like the same kind of like wavelength and frequency as me right now are also learning to do the exact same thing. Because and that's what I mean is that we are not, there's no difference between you and me. It's just that like we're all on our different paths, and we're all learning these things through downloads and self-reflection and our own healing journeys. So you'll get there, but you also, I'm so sorry, but you also, I'm just going to turn this off. You also need to do your work. And that then if you do your work, then blessings will come in. Blessings will come in once you start doing your work. And it'll be a lot easier to learn these things whenever you start healing and processing. You cannot do one without the other. Okay, moving forward. Okay, law number 9, law of relativity. We are all just existing in this universe, but we go through tests sometimes to change our perspectives and to realize that we are all just existing. So basically, everyone goes through stuff to remind us that life is much bigger than just eat, sleep, make money, and pass away at the end of your life. And a big thing is that a lot of people will fail their tests and keep repeating cycles because they never realized that we are here to grow, and that is why souls are here in the first place. Because a big agreement that you made whenever you came to this earth school is that like you agreed to forget everything, right? And then that kind of was able to help us get our free will, because we need to be able to learn things here. This is kind of like a fast pace. I like to think of it as like a, I don't know, it's like a very difficult school, as like what I like to think of it as, but for our souls. And some people, they just keep repeating cycles because they never realize that our soul is here to grow. Um, and I've said this in previous episodes, you can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make them drink. And that's okay. You can love those people from a distance. Do not do their homework for them. Just like I'm not going to do your homework for you. I can give you the tools, I can give you the notes, but I'm not going to do your work for you, just like how you shouldn't be doing it for them. Um, yeah, it's just, I learned that whenever I was going through my own stuff. So, law number 10, law of polarity. Everything in the universe has an opposite. This is all about duality and balance. How can you appreciate the good days without the bad? And how can you appreciate the spring without the winter? There's a balance to everything. But at the same time, trying to stay away from toxic positivity. And that's something that I think I apologized for in a previous episode, is I never mean to have toxic positivity. I just like to live in high vibrations, and I like to spread love whenever I can. But there are definitely days that I have gone through where I have to feel my emotions and make sure that I'm healing, just like how I just said, like, but I'm more appreciative of the good days that I have because of the darkness that I have gone through. So for every death, there is a rebirth. You might, if you are into tarot at all, you probably have heard like the death and rebirth card, right? I mean, there's just a polarity of that. For every time that your old self dies, you are reborn into something that is bigger and better, and you transform, just like how a caterpillar goes from being a caterpillar from its shell and becomes a beautiful butterfly, metamorphosis, right? And for every gift you receive, give another away. You basically put out what you want back. So stay in the polarity that you want to be in. Law number 11. We're almost there. Law of rhythm. Everything has a cycle, and change is growth. I almost said gross. Change is growth. If you feel stagnant, it could be that you are not willing to break a cycle that is keeping you stuck, and you are rather fighting against the flow of the universe. Everything has a flow. We can also tap into flow energy whenever we're in the zone. So if you've ever like been working on something and you're like, oh yeah, like I was just in the zone, I didn't even realize how much time passed me. There are actually breathing exercises that you can do to get into that, so that you can create the best work that you want. But that is what being into flow is, and that's why I actually changed the bio of the podcast to I'm giving you a raft for the river rapids of life, because I don't know if you've ever been like white river rafting, or if you've ever been in the ocean or anywhere where there is a current. But if you've ever gotten sucked under a current, it is not good at all, because you're fighting against it, right? And you're trying to live and you're kicking and you're screaming and you're trying not to die, you're trying not to drown. And so that is the same kind of metaphor for life in terms of like being willing to change and grow, um, versus fighting it. You know, willing to change and grow and live in peace versus fighting the change that you need to be in. And some might see these as tower moments. Again, if you're into tarot, I don't do tarot anymore. That is an old tool that I used to use. However, I still know the cards very well. And if you've ever gotten a tarot reading on your for you page, you might have learned about tower moments. And tower moments are my least favorite card. They used to be, anyways. I think they still are. But you know, sometimes you have to destroy and let go of something so that new opportunity and energy can come in. So, for example, leaving a job or relationship that doesn't serve you. You know, whatever is for you is never going to pass you by. It's just whether or not you're aware enough and ready to accept it, whatever it comes in, and you have made space for it. If you're not willing to break your old cycles and heal and learn, then how are you going to accept your new blessings? And I'm preaching to the choir to myself because sometimes I have to remember that. That's why shadow work is so important. That's why journaling is so important. How are you supposed to heal from your old stuff and bring in new things if you haven't let go of the past, if you haven't let go of these old mindsets? And I was just talking, you know, like about don't do homework for other people, do your own homework, right? Don't do it for other people. This is the same as hitting rock bottom so that way you can go back up, right? And I had to deal with that. I used to be, I think I said this in a previous episode, I used to be a severe alcoholic. And it wasn't until one of my old best friends ended up leaving my life and distancing herself and had an old roommate who was like, hey, dude, you got to wake up. Like, this isn't, you got to stop doing this. And at the time, I was still resistant, but that was kind of like my wake up call of, okay, you're right. You're right. I can't keep doing this. And that's whenever I started going on my own healing journey of going to AA, trying to do better for myself. And I was very thankful. I am very thankful. But I would, at the time before that, until those people let go of me and basically kicked me out of the bird's nest, I wouldn't have changed. So don't resist change. Change is growth. I know it sucks sometimes. It gets easier with time and it becomes so much more rewarding as time goes on. All right, last law of gender. This is the understanding of yin and yang, and that everything in the universe have feminine and masculine energies. And that is why you might hear, oh, like you have a divine masculine coming in or like divine feminine coming in, blah, 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 whatever it may be. However, we all have this balance in ourselves. So this isn't about your external like gender. That's not what I'm talking about. What I am talking about is the properties of divine masculinity and femininity in ourself and finding balance between those two things. So someone who might be more in their masculine might be, you know, more cold-hearted, but they work extremely hard, but they put money above everything else. Whereas someone who is in their feminine might be more creative, um, and more intuitive with their head in the clouds, but it's very hard for them to, you know, bring their goals and ambitions to like completion or fruition because they always have their head in the clouds and they're always about emotion and they're never focusing on, okay, here's like the ambitious part and the logical part. So you have to find balance between like, you know, working hard and also following your intuition. So, for example, if you want to build a farm where you have a lot of crops and you want to grow that so that way you can, you know, have a beautiful life or whatever it may be, how are you supposed to grow the crops if you never start the farm or if you don't have the ambition and discipline to work on the farm? Where your feminine came in was you thinking of the idea and having the passion behind it, where your masculine came in was you actually putting in the work and having the ambition to do so and having the discipline, right? So finding a balance of both. Okay. And a lot of people will have like this in their relationships as well. Like they'll have the divine masculine and divine feminine. Um, and that's a whole another thing as well. But yes, so those are the 12 laws of the universe. I'm going to take just a small break, and then I am going to come back and dive more into law of manifestation and kind of teach you a little bit about what I have learned personally about manifestation, because I feel like that's more of the fun stuff. And then we'll wrap up. So thank you for listening as far as you have. Okay, so we are now going into the last sections of the podcast. Thank you for hanging in there if you are still here. So as I said, there has been a lot of commotion, hubbub all around the law of attraction and manifestations. And a big author or person that you might have heard excerpts from is going to be Abraham Hicks. Her name is Esther Hicks. However, she used to channel her spirit guide Abraham, who gave her a lot of keys to her teachings. And I don't necessarily agree with all of her teachings, but she does have a lot of good stuff. And I know there's a lot of controversy around like her and Alan Watts. I personally enjoy a lot of the things that they have to say. But there were a couple things that I was like, I don't exactly agree with this, but she does have some good stuff. So, anyways, basically, the understanding of her teachings is that we are all Abraham's teachings, sorry, that is her spirit guide. Basically, the understanding is that we are all co-creators in our reality with Source, Creator, God, whatever you'd like to call them. I'm going to call them Source from now on. And so we are all co-creators with Source. We all came here to create and learn how to harness our abilities and power. And this is something that we all agree to forget before we came here. And I mentioned that previously in this episode. Because if we were to remember all the information that we have ever learned, it would absolutely overload us in this vessel, which ties into egg theory. As a mass consciousness of like our collective consciousness, we have lived here. We're very old, to say the least. Anyways, moving forward. I know that I said this in a previous episode. I think there's a lot of controversy, specifically in the Christian culture, about manifestation because a lot of people think that it is witchcraft or that it is like it goes against like God's plan for us and all this kind of stuff. I have done meditations and talked to God about this, and what I ended up getting back is that, and I've said this before, is that he put it perfectly, he always does, is that if you were to be planning a birthday party for a 3-year-old girl, your daughter, right? She comes to you and she's like, Mom, I want a birthday party. Dad, I want a birthday party. Whoever, right? Are you going to expect her to plan it all herself? No. You're going to ask her what kind of cake she wants, what kind of decorations she wants, who does she want there. You are then going to take that information and go and plan her a better party than she would ever be able to plan herself. Is that not correct? Maybe you don't want kids. I don't want to hear that, okay? You understand the metaphor that I'm going for. That is what manifestation is. You are going to Source and you are saying, this is what I want in my reality. And you are co-creating with Source. And Source already has a plan. And Source is going to come back and give you what you want in the way that is for your highest potential and your highest good. Not always. I mean, there's some kinks to it and whatever it may be. There's a lot of different layers. But my point is that manifestation is not some evil witchcraft, hoodoo, voodoo, whatever you want to call it. Manifestation is you co-creating and tapping into your power and communicating with Source. Even in the Christian culture, there's a whole verse about how God says, yeah, God knows what you want. They already know what you want. They know what's on your heart. They want a relationship. They want you to come and talk to them so that you guys can work together. That is what manifestation is about. Okay? So, I am going to go through a few steps of what I have learned in my manifestation journey. I don't have it exactly down pat. This is from what I have learned, and this is what I have used personally to manifest things in my own life. So first things first, be specific with what you want without worrying how it is going to happen. So for example, If you are wanting to manifest a house, manifest what you want the walls to look like, how big you want it, get as specific as humanly possible, right? And something that might be good as well is like a confirmation that it is what you are manifesting. So, like, if you are manifesting, you're going house hunting and you're manifesting that you want a house, it might be good to have some sort of confirmation that this is going to be the house for you. So, for example, something that I've done in the past is I'll be like, I want a purple door. And then I will find a place that is perfect for myself and my partner that has a purple door. And it's exactly what I wanted down to the T. But it's even better than what I could have imagined because I co-created with Source, right? Okay, so that's first. Be specific. Get in the energy of thinking about what you want and be specific as possible because it's going to make the next steps easier. Number two, second, tap into the emotions of how it is going to feel whenever you receive that manifestation. Can you visualize it? If you can visualize it and sit down and meditate and hold that picture for at least 15 seconds in your brain, as specific as possible, and tap into the emotions that you are going to feel, that is going to be the biggest superpower for getting that manifestation to come towards you because you are now tapping into that frequency, right? So that's the same. Some person said it like this. They were like, whenever you are in the car and you are going through radio channels, and you have like that static in between, and then you finally get to the radio channel that you want, that is what you are doing by tapping into the emotions and being specific and visualizing what you want and feeling what you want, because then you are going to tap into that radio channel that you want to get in. Okay. Third, take action towards what you want to help bring it into your reality. Again, we'll go back to the fashion designer metaphor, right? If you want to become a fashion designer, you need to go out and buy, maybe not buy, but hope that you can you can even manifest a sewing thread and a needle if that's all you wanted. But you want to take actions towards that. So maybe watching videos on how to sew, reading books on how to sew, watching videos and visualizing being on the runway, or like, I don't know how fashion, I'm so sorry, but like visualizing yourself as a like the person designing the runway dresses. Sorry, it's like slipping away from me. But take action towards it. Start going to fashion opportunities whenever it becomes accessible to you, if it does. Does that make sense? You have to take some sort of action, even if it's small. Take action. If you want a remote job, I think this is a much better example. If you want a new job that is going to make you happy, and say that you want a remote job, you need to take the action of applying to the jobs that you want. Does that make sense? I think that's a much better metaphor. Okay. Number four, um, releasing the limiting beliefs that you have around the manifestation. So if there is something that is coming up in response to you trying to manifest, like for example, if you are trying to manifest a new house, we're going to go back to that one. If you're trying to manifest a new house and every time that you think about it, you hear that thought in the back of your head go, yeah, but I don't really deserve a new house. Like, there's no way I'm going to get this house, right? It is very important that you sit down and you process why you feel that way and why those emotions and feelings are coming up, which ties into, number two of tapping into your emotions, kind of. But it's important to remove those blockages and limiting beliefs, because a big thing with manifestation that I have learned is that you have to know that you are able to receive these things. There's a difference between the emotion of like wanting something to happen and knowing it is like reality. Does that make sense? So like, that the sky is blue, You know that as a fact. You have accepted it as a fact. So that kind of level of just knowing is going to be a big superpower. And I think that's something that I struggle with personally is like knowing versus thinking and wanting. But then it's also like the understanding of I don't chase, I attract. Whatever is for me will find me because whatever wants me more. For you to be able to know that, something will happen or whatever it is, it's like that feeling that is in your chest where you're just like, yeah, I know this is going to happen. Don't worry about how. Stop worrying about how. Um, because then you start to chase. And if you're sitting there thinking, oh, when is it going to come? When is it going to come? Is it going to come tomorrow? Is it going to come right now? That's you chasing. So you just want to be like the law, I think it was the law of relativity, just exist and understand that it will happen because you know that it will happen. So something that I know, actually, I saw this in a movie. So there's this movie about this woman who I don't remember what it was, but she anything that she would write down in her little book of prayers would happen, right? So if she wrote it in that prayer book, like it was said in the movie, like if she wrote anything in that prayer book, like it would come true, right? And it was because she knew that if she wrote it down and showed it, like sent it, like said it to God, that it would happen, right? Tapping into a higher self and higher source is also really helpful in this. Sometimes it's nice to have that little cushion of being like, hey, I don't know if I can do this on my own, but I know that God can, right? And that's a big thing about faith and trust. um but regardless, I think that's a big thing that goes missing with manifestations, um, is that people are like, oh, yeah, I don't know when it's going to happen, or I don't know if it's going to happen. And that is where you kind of get a little murky, or things come in and they're not exactly how you want them to be, which is why you should always be careful what you wish for. Be specific. Be specific. Um, because you want it to be clear. Don't overanalyze it, just exists, but it's also like, be specific. Like, yeah. Anyways, I think another good thing to do that is helpful, is like the whole going back to reprogramming your mind of like, say these things out loud, say affirmations, write it down, whatever it may be. Anytime that it pops up in your mind, give it attention and think about it and think about how good it's going to feel and think about what you're going to do with it and whatever it may be. So, like, a big thing that people will do is they'll try to manifest money. So, like, think about how it's going to feel. And if a limiting belief comes up of like, oh, yeah, that's never going to happen to me, or I don't know how that's going to happen, or whatever it is, remember to sit down and process why you are having that limiting belief, so that way you can process it and heal it. And then whenever that limiting belief comes up, it's a lot easier to release it because you're like, oh, yeah, right. I don't believe that anymore. Okay, let me move on. Every single day is a new possibility to be rebirthed. Okay, it's a new opportunity to be who you want to be and start taking steps to who you want to be. And I don't remember if this was on my old podcast or this podcast. I think it was on this podcast that was about, I believe her username is the Real Life Changer. And I want to say I already posted her video on my TikTok and possibly Instagram that was talking about, like, if you were ordering Amazon packages and you had the same delivery for years and years and years and years, sometimes it's going to take a while for your manifestations to come through and be actually what you want. So don't give up, right? Because if you were ordering the packages of I'm not good enough and I'll never be good enough and blah, 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 and I hate myself and all this stuff, and that's what's being delivered to you automatically every month for the past 50 years. And then one day you wake up and you decide to say, actually, I am good enough and I want 10 boxes if I'm good enough, 10 boxes if I'm beautiful, and blah, blah, blah. Sometimes those boxes that were already automatically being sent to your house for the past 50 years are now still getting sent for the next couple months, right? Because that's how it's been automatically, right? So it might take like a month or a few months for it to update, for you to be able to get the I am worthy. Okay, now I'm really feeling it, right? It might take a while. That's okay. Don't give up. That's a big thing. I think that's a lot of people give up because they're like, oh, it's not happening now and I don't feel any different. And I know that because I did that too. Anyways. um Number 5, last one. Fifth is communicating with nature and showing gratefulness for the things that you do have. And showing gratefulness whenever it does arrive. The universe likes to hear thanks. I will say that. And it's just good to show gratefulness and have gratefulness in your life. But yeah, communing with nature, paying attention to maybe a big thing that happens with me is like paying attention to the synchronicity. So if I'm trying to manifest something into my life, I will usually see it show up in my reality, maybe on someone else. So like if I want a red dress, maybe the next day somebody in a red dress will show up or whatever it may be, and that's just kind of confirmation that like, yes, it is coming to me and the universe has heard me and it is on the way, if that makes sense. Sometimes they like to surprise you of when, and sometimes you might not get the package because what you want is not for your highest good. Be careful about manifesting other people, okay? Because sometimes rejection is protection. Actually, pretty much every time rejection is protection. I usually say God's protection, but you know, rejection is protection, okay? And also, you should stop trying to control other people. So, moving forward, um, you have to clear out the baggage, like I said, and that will help you be able to start tapping more into manifestations. You have to be able to learn to crawl, walk, and then run. So if you're crawling right now and not dealing with your baggage that you have been holding on to for years and years and years, that is going to block you from being able to manifest. If you have limiting beliefs that you've been holding on to and you haven't done any work with them, how are you going to manifest if you're still in that low, like that frequency, right? That's why shadow work and journaling is so important. I know I've said that like 16 times. And by the way, this list is, I'm not going off other people's beliefs. This is like what I have learned through other people's beliefs, but this is also what I've just learned personally on my own in my own life. Because I know that if I write something down, it's going to come true. I know that with a sense of knowing, right? A big thing that my guides taught me this week is that if you want a good method of um, bringing in a manifestation is role playing, or not necessarily role playing, method acting. So if you've ever heard of actors that method act, you like Heath Ledger, for example. Whenever he was the Joker, he method acted. So he basically stepped into that role constantly. There was never a point where he wasn't the Joker, which is why things happened the way that they did, which rest in peace, Heath Ledger. But the point is, not in that dark way, in the way that you want manifestations to come true. Sometimes you just have to fake it till you make it. But if you are manifesting something into your life, step into the way that that person who has the manifestation already would act. Does that make sense? So think of it like you just got assigned a new theater role or a movie role, and you are now being assigned to act out that part. That is what I mean by that. So that's a really good way, because then you're embodying that energy and then you kind of step into it, right? Because you're like stepping into that frequency, stepping into that timeline. Emotions and visualizations and meditation are a huge thing. So again, that's going to help you tap into that radio frequency. Flow versus stagnation. There are certain breath works that you can do, breath exercises that you can do that will help you step into flow state, specifically with meditation and such things like that. So that will be really helpful. If you can do even 15 seconds a day, I think I said that already, that will help you with visualizations. And then another thing is scripting. This is another thing. So this is another method that my guides told me, is that you can like write out a script. And that's actually a really good way to kind of like figure out details. So you can be like, think about like yourself like writing a chapter in a book. If you're a writer, you can be like talk about yourself like in the third person, and it's like you're co-creating and like writing your story of like, oh, in like 6 months this person, Ruby did blah blah blah, and she, went out to this and she did this, and this is how like her day was in that other reality, because that can also be really helpful whenever you are trying to visualize, because you're really stepping into the emotions of that person, that future person that is you, and then you're also visualizing it and you're feeling it and you're role playing it. So scripting is a big thing. I don't think that's what it's called, but that is what I call it. Sorry for doing that into the mic. A Another big thing is that you have to find a balance between ego, higher self, and body. So that's just a whole nother thing in itself, but just like balancing mostly your ego versus your higher self. So like your ego is going to be more in scarcity, victim mindset, thinking about all the logical reasons as to why this can't happen in the reality, whereas your higher self is like, I know this will happen, and being positive and like realizing your higher potential, if that makes sense, which starts with journaling and shadow work and meditation. And the more that you balance this, the easier it will be to manifest things. Oh, sorry, that's my cat. um, you can also reprogram your mind using meditation. I saw this on a video whenever somebody was talking to AI, and they were talking about how in The Sims, if you ever played like any of the Sims games, like Sims 2, Sims 3, Sims 4, whatever, Sims, which I think they're coming out with another one. Anyways, the point is simulations, right? Simulation game. Um, you can put cheat codes in the Sims games to give your sim more money, whatever it may be, right? And whenever you are meditating, it is said from AI that you can basically, that's the same as going in with a cheat code, because it's basically the person was like, if we are in a matrix, doesn't that mean that we could go in and put in cheat codes just like we could in the Sims games? And the AI was like, yes, and you can do that by meditating and reprogramming your mind. Which is why I had that whole episode about reprogramming your mind. So meditation is great. It can be really, really helpful. Also, just reprogramming your thoughts, being more mindful with the thoughts that you are putting out, and being intentional. And that's what Jesus was talking all about. He was like, you know what? He knew who he was. And that's why he was able to manifest things very quickly. And I actually have a video that I'm going to post on TikTok that I found today. I don't remember the person's name. It was Crystal something, but I will put it on the TikTok, and I will make sure to give them credit whenever I post it there. Again, it's LGFG podcast. And it is another conversation with herself and AI, and them basically tapping into manifestation and all those good things. So, as we reach a close of this episode, I wanted to give something that I was grateful for and a song of the week. Something that I'm grateful for this week is that I have a new mic set up and I have the opportunity to be doing this podcast again. Another thing that I am grateful for is the fact that my boyfriend and I have been doing a lot of charcuterie nights. I love charcuterie, and we've been doing a lot of movie marathons. So I'm super thankful for that because that's been awesome. We've been able to have a lot more quality time together, and I've been calming down my nervous system. That's a big thing about the balancing that I was saying earlier with the ego, higher self, and body, is like calming down your nervous system. That's what I mean by body. And also, you know what? We're not going to go back into it. The point is, I am grateful for that because I've been able to really calm down my nervous system, and it's still happening, right? Because I've been fight or flight for so long. But like, pulling my ear, stroking my neck so that way I am stimulating the vagus nerve, patting my chest, giving myself hugs whenever I'm feeling extremely triggered, or just all day whenever I think about it. Anytime that I can't, doing diaphragm breathing, putting a hand on my chest and a hand on my belly, and then feeling my diaphragm on my belly like a balloon lift up. Right, that's diaphragm breathing. Sorry about the craziness in the background. My cat has the zoomies, and I feel that. And then the song of the week, I actually have two. There's a band that I discovered a few months back. It is called Royel Otis, Royel Otis, and I'm going to put this on the Spotify playlist. It is under Let It Go, Flow, Grow. That's what the playlist is called on Spotify. But the song of this week, there's two of them. One is Sofa King, and the other one is Linger by Sirius XM. It's one of their sessions, but yeah, they're both great. You probably have already heard the Linger cover by them. They're fantastic. I definitely want to see them whenever they come to town again. The first one sold out. Actually, I think they're coming next month. Anyways, thank you so much for listening, as long as you have. And hopefully you come back for more. And hopefully I made this a little bit more interesting than I did with my first season. I felt like I was really stuffy and like reading off a script my first season. So I'm trying to loosen up and be my authentic self so that I can practice what I preach. But regardless, thank you guys. Hopefully this wasn't too horrible. I'm just kidding. I know that it was a fun time. I had fun. So hang in there with me while I try to figure out how to do all this video stuff and editing and all of the things. I appreciate you. You are loved. Thank you for being here. Peace.